States. And I'm so glad to have you here. Could you please make sure to unmute yourself and let us know why you're joining us tonight and what you're looking for in tonight's meeting? For you, that's for you, Ilham.
All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity and chance and the warm welcoming, everybody. I'm Ilham Saheri. You can simply call me Ilham. So what I do for a living is actually as an educator. So in Indonesia, I'm working with teenagers like students and university students for education purpose. What I normally do is inspiring and educating people on being confident, being brave to basically learn another language, especially like international language like English, and get involved, not only learn, but also use the language to make friends, develop their career, yep, pursue education abroad and thingy. So I'm an educator when it comes to learning a language or learning English. And tonight I'm visiting Minnesota Toastmasters. Is that how we pronounce it? Yep, it's Minnesota Toastmasters for the purpose of learning from you guys and of course, making more friends in Toastmasters. So I'm very
Very
happy to
good.
be here. Yep, and nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. We use the American
Great.
Sign Language clapping here in virtual world as we live within the framework of the box before us.
Uh,
It's now my privilege to turn this meeting over to tonight's Toastmaster. Please help me welcome Mr. John Barrett.
Today's theme is There Is No Try. Most of you will remember the immortal lines of the great Jedi Master Yoda, who said to a young Luke Skywalker, "Do or do not. There is no try." The idea is a very binary way of looking at things, and it's not at all the way we do things in Toastmasters. In fact, here we encourage you to try and to try again. And I thought of this concept while I was talking with someone while I was recording an episode of the Collecting Confidence podcast, because it's my belief that the more you try, the more confident you get, and eventually the more you succeed. I think a better approach would be along the lines of the great South African golfer Gary Player. Someone commented that his play was lucky, and he responded with, "The harder I practice, the luckier I get." The philosophy is much more aligned with the old proverb, "Practice makes perfect." The underlying concept is that to do better, you first have to do. But it's so easy to waste our time sitting on a couch, laying on a bed, playing video games for hours and hours. Some of my computer games actually keep track of how many hours I've been online. That is a shamefully large number. And there's other things that I could have done, but this year I'm trying to play less, sleep less, watch less, and do more. Taking that first step is actually the hardest, to do something. It doesn't matter what it is, but getting out of the rut that you're in of not doing something, of sitting around, of saying, "Oh, it's too hard to do that. I don't have time to clean that. I can't do whatever it is." Whether it's gardening, home repair, biking, hiking, camping, fishing, the more you do, the more confident you get. And the more you're able to learn and build on that, and the more you'll be able to do and succeed and feel good about yourself. How does this apply to you? How does this apply to Toastmasters? Well, certainly the more you do in Toastmasters, the better the meetings go, the easier it is for us to have events and contests and even meetings because you volunteered to do something. And thank you for all who volunteered to do something today. The more you do outside of Toastmasters, though, the easier it is to come up with impressive speeches about things that we haven't done yet. The easier it is to have topics to talk about with table topics. And the more enjoyable your life will be, the more confident you'll be, the more confident speaker you'll be, because you'll have accomplished so much more. As we start putting the COVID years in the rearview mirror, perhaps we'll realize how limited our time is, and hopefully we'll start to do more. There is no try. There is only do or do not. And that's the first step, is to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at our agenda. Today, we're going to have the general evaluator talk about the evaluation team. We're going to have two wonderful speakers, followed by a very impressive table topic session, and then two evaluators, followed by a look through the evaluation team through the eyes of the general evaluator. And with that, I will turn it over to our general evaluator, Bob Schlossmacher.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. The first person I'll call on today is Jim, who is Nancy's evaluator for her speech. Jim, tell us what you'll be looking for in Nancy's speech.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Tonight, Nancy is speaking from her Pathways Level 4 about her social media presence and how she's built hers. And she's going to share her story, part of her journey. I'll be looking for the standard things that we typically look for in a Toastmaster speech: an overall flow of the content, vocal variety, use of gestures within the framework of the screen, clear communication, and see how she ties not only how she starts, but how she concludes together. And I'll give a report at the end of tonight's meeting. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jim. And next, I'll be calling on Jeannie, who is going to be evaluator for Jacob's speech tonight. Jeannie?
Yes, I am proud to evaluate Jacob's speech tonight. He is giving a speech that he says is a general topic speech, not in his pathway, but Jacob, I would encourage you to see after the meeting to see if you can make it fit for something in your pathway. The things I'll be looking for are good eye contact. Is he comfortable when he speaks? Is he speaking with confidence? Those are things that Jacob is working on, and I'm going to pay attention to. I'm really looking forward to hearing him speak today. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jeannie. And now for the really hard part of being general evaluator of tonight's meeting. I'm going to call on our timer. Is there a timer out here tonight?
Yes, Mr. General Evaluator. As things have come together at the last minute, it is I once again, Jimmy Z. As your timer tonight, I will be looking for specific framework under which we have in the guidelines of Toastmasters. Tonight, both Nancy and Jacob will be giving a speech from 5 to 7 minutes. What you'll see in my background at 5 minutes is a green background that will transfer as it loads up right now, boom. And at 6 minutes, you'll see yellow. At 7 minutes, you'll see red, and red will remain on until your speech is concluded. In the table topics, you will have the same thing. It's 1 to 2 minutes. So you see green at 1, yellow at 1:30, and red at 2. For the evaluators, it's 2 to 3 minutes. Green at 2 minutes, yellow at 2:30, and red at 3. At the end of the meeting, I'll come back and give a report on how we did on our timing in relation to tonight's meeting. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jim. Thanks for taking that role. Next, I will call on our grammarian, or maybe our grammarian / counter. Please unmute yourself and tell us what you'll be looking for. Anybody?
I can do grammarian if you want. Since I said you should do more, I'll do more, and I'll be the grammarian. The word today is juggernaut, which is a huge or powerful force or institution. To use in a sentence, The Nike marketing team is a juggernaut when it comes to getting the word out about their product. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thanks for taking that, John. Did I say grammarian / counter?
I think
did I
Scott wanted to
say-
be the counter.
Oh, Scott, wonderful. Take her away, Scott.
Yes, so thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. I will be keeping a tally of all of the filler words used throughout the meeting, and I will give a report during the evaluation session. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator. Thanks.
Ooh, I've got an evaluation team put together. Fantastic. After the evaluators' reports on speeches and counters, I will come back and give my take on the meeting as a whole that has been done tonight. And with that, I'm going to hand this back to our Toastmaster, John Barrett. Take it away, John.
Thank you. Our first speaker is a charter member of this club, Nancy. Nancy is working on her presentation mastery path, and tonight is doing a level 4 elective on building a social media presence. She will share about her journey on social media since 2006 and how she uses it personally and professionally. Nancy Zugswert, My Social Media Journey. My Social Media Journey, Nancy Zugswert.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Honored guest and fellow Toastmasters, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 15 years or so, you are probably quite familiar with the term social media. It is, in the span of millennia, a very new phenomenon. And yet in a very short amount of time, social media has had perhaps more impact on our culture in the United States and globally than almost any other medium in history. Never before has the ability to have a platform that could reach hundreds and thousands and even millions of people with a single click of a button been in the hands of the world. Information dissemination at that scale used to be reserved for the elite, the powerful, the owners of the printing presses, the owners of the broadcasting companies. And now through social media, every single person on the planet could literally get their voice out in front of millions. It is a powerful tool. It is sometimes a terrifying tool, and it is sometimes joyful, sometimes sad. It is representative of the whole human experience. I began my journey on social media back when Facebook was just a little bitty ant and not the juggernaut it has become this day in terms of massive presence in the world. I got into social media somewhat accidentally and due to my role as a caring mother. When in 2006, my teenage son came and said to me, "I want a Facebook account." Well, all I'd ever heard of was MySpace, and I didn't know much about Facebook other than I just recently started working at a college, which is where Facebook had its original presence. In fact, it was originally available only to people who had a .edu email or web address, and now it has obviously expanded to everyone. So to help make sure Kevin would be safe online, I opened my own Facebook account so that I could see what it was about and make sure it was okay for him. Well, I saw it as relatively harmless, let him be on it. And the first two things that happened were, one, I suddenly started getting friend requests. I just showed up on this platform and people started saying, "Hey, Nancy, let's be friends." They were people I knew, but somehow Facebook knew to tell them that there I was on Facebook. Should have been a clue right there that This was not going to be my own choice of who I'm connected to. And then the second thing that happened is I had the very first lesson I had with my son is he had a girlfriend at the time. It was his very first girlfriend. And when I saw that she posted that they were in a relationship, I immediately marched to his room and I had a talk. It's like, are you sure you want to put I'm in a relationship with Kara on there? You know, if you break up, the whole world knows about it. And he goes, well, first of all, I didn't put it on there. She did, and I don't care. So that was the my censorship as a mom pretty much ended there, and he got to live his own life. In the meantime, I was quickly gathering friends and trying to figure out what this was about. I ate peanuts today. We were so clever in the very beginning. But social media has evolved greatly since then. And I have myself evolved from a casual user of it for a truly social platform to share with family and friends into a tool that I actually use regularly for my business as a speaker and coach. And it is a wonderful and terrible thing. As I said, I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but I'd like to focus for the purpose of this evening on some of the very positive aspects of social media as the powerful tool that it can be. As I said, my journey is a little atypical in that I used it first socially, then I was in marketing and communications work in a college setting, and I actually did have a tangential responsibility for some of the social media content in those capacities as a crisis communications professional. And as part of my job, I definitely had my share of monitoring social media when our organizations went there. And I can see by the green that I'm actually getting long-winded. So I'm going to pick up the pace of my presentation a little because I have visual aids. And just to show you how quickly we can morph in social media world, I went from having one Facebook account to having multiple accounts that I use for different purposes. Let me just briefly show you where I am now on my journey as I share a little bit about each platform as well. So we'll start with the finding of my social media platform that I had all set up and ready to go. No, so sorry. I apologize. You know, when you get all things set up, this is a life in Toastmasters world, right? One moment, please. Stop share. Thanks. Sorry, people. Nancy did something to her. I see what I did here. You know, Zoom. That's when I signed into Zoom. That's what did it. Okay, thanks. Let me try again. Share screen. All right. The original social media platform, Facebook, is a personal profile page. And if you have a Facebook page, you probably have something similar. And a personal profile is where you get to share things and elements of your journey and what's on your mind. You might share videos that you make. You might share a comment that you ask a question to seek engagement. And that is currently how I use my profile. I'm a little business oriented in my profile. I've changed most of my posts to be public, not just private and friends, because I am trying to build a following related to that. You can also have a business profile that is actually a business page. And so this is what I have in terms of a business page. That's for my business, Nancy Z Unlimited. This is a slightly different way of presenting information where you may be more professional. You might say, these are my business hours and things like that. Wow, guys, I haven't spoken for quite a while, and I forget how fast 5 to 7 minutes goes. Mr. Toastmaster, how would you feel if I went a couple extra minutes in my presentation tonight? All right, I'm going to just keep going and trust that if I were in a speech contest, I would be heartily disqualified at this point. But if you'll bear with me, I do want to just share a little bit more that I think you might find just interesting, just the flexibility. Another thing you can do with a Facebook profile or with a social media is to actually create groups of interest. After a recent summit that I hosted, created what I call a Facebook group, and it is called Floundering to Fabulous You. And this group I nurture and I have created to connect people with the topic. My target audience is in this group, and it's a private group where we can interact without everybody seeing all of our posts. And just to wrap it up, I do have social media presence that I actually won't take the time to show you. But now if you look, I've gone, as I said, from a single Facebook site to 3 different Facebook entities. I have a profile on LinkedIn, which is a more professional business site. I have a profile on Instagram. And surprisingly to many people, as an almost 60-year-old woman, I have a TikTok account with 4,700 followers. And so I've built that organically. And TikTok, if you're not aware, is short form video. And that is another element. Social media has gone from posts of words only that said, I had pad thai for dinner, to videos that you make yourself to educate, inform, or entertain the world. Social media is here I would say, if it were up to the people, social media is here to stay. I do not have time tonight to discuss the incredible, unusual, and unprecedented influence that our current United States government is trying to take, not only on social media, but the entire internet. I do highly encourage you to become very informed about this. And if you have any concerns, you might want to call your legislators, congresspeople, senators, etc. But it is a strong tool. It is a benefit to the business, and it can be what you want it to be. It can be fun. It can be business oriented, but it is very powerful. And as I said, not just Facebook itself, but the whole social media realm is a juggernaut in terms of our societal influence that we will never forget, regardless of where it goes. It's changed all of our lives. Thank you for allowing me the extra time. It was a pleasure to share this with you tonight. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Evaluator Timer. Could I get 1 minute on the clock? And if people would like to send Nancy a note on the side in the private chat, please do so. Okay, that's the minute. Our second speaker today is Jacob, and Jacob is not working off of a particular pathway, but we're going to have Jacob forge ahead and do a speech that is sure to be a cut above the rest. Jacob Ryan, the blacksmith and the sword. The blacksmith and the sword, Jacob Ryan.
Thank you, John. Chafing, sore legs, and cramps. Does this sound fun to you? The answer is no, by the way. The answer is no. You don't get need to be nice. Welcome to the life of someone who runs. Now, I have decided to do a marathon in May. And for those of you who don't know, a marathon is 26.2 miles of constant running, agony, and a test of mental and physical fortitude. I decided one day about 2 years back that I wanted to do I wanted to do a marathon sometime in my life. And I'm just getting to this year. The reason for that is because I wasn't going to just crawl out of bed, run a marathon, and see what else I want to do later that day, maybe go out to eat, maybe hang out with some friends. No, it was something that I had to prepare myself mentally for. So what I decided to do was to run a half marathon first, and that is 13.6 miles. Now, I am on the athletic side, I would say, rather than not. But I didn't run track. I didn't play many sports. I just played pickup basketball at the local YMCA. So running, it was in my life, but it was never something that I would constantly do for something that was fun. So I went out on my first run, ran a mile, and at the end of it, I was dead. My lungs were about to explode. My bones were aching. My muscles were boom, 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 thumping. And I was thinking to myself, how the heck am I going to run 13.6 miles? And I can barely run 1 or 2 miles, let alone 26.2. But I had to kill that thought, kill that doubt. And the next day came and I ran one more mile, and maybe I took the next day off and the next day was 1.5 miles. Maybe the next day was 2 miles, took the next day off and the next day was 3 miles. So it was this very slow process of leveling up my physical, but also my mental, because when you're running, especially without music or noise to push you past where you think you can go, you start to talk to yourself, and it's a lot of you get a clear understanding of how you're really talking to yourself. And some of the things that I would say was, why the heck are you doing this? This is dumb. You're running. No one's making you do this. Why are you doing this? It wanted to quit. And I was thinking to myself, okay, my voice is saying this. And I didn't think it was only when I ran. I came to the conclusion that this was happening all the time. But running was just one place where I could sit down, or not sit down, but run, get quiet, and really be with my thoughts and see what they were. Now, I didn't do this because it sounded fun. It sounded the opposite of fun. It sounded hard, treacherous. It sounded like it was going to take up everything from me. So I got up to the point where I was running 7, 8, 9 mile runs. And on the day of the half, I went, and I never ran a full half, a full 13.6, but I knew that I could do 10 and that I could push my way past those last 3. So the first few miles, they go fine. Once it comes to mile 6, 7, that's when the voice starts coming back up. That's when your body starts talking to you. Your body and your mind are both talking to you, telling you to stop. You got to kill that thought and push past it. Mile 10 comes around. I can feel my hips tightening, and I knew, because I did not stretch good enough that day. I had about 20 minutes, 30 minutes of stretching, which my body needs more. And eventually I got to the point where I crossed the finish line. And I remember crossing and I started crying. I was weeping in the streets. And it wasn't because, oh, this is so hard and it's over finally. No, it was because I thought back to that first run, to the person that I was at the start of it, that I was this person who I had a ceiling on I put a ceiling on myself. I put a cap on myself. And by practicing, sorry, a phone call. And by practicing and keeping on getting out there, I was able to push past that. So what I learned from that experience was that, 1, how I talk to myself, 2, that I put caps on myself, and 3, that it doesn't matter exactly where you come from, where you start, who you are. You might not be the strongest, the fastest, the youngest, the most charismatic, and that's fine because I'm not either. But what I learned from that was you can be who you want to be, and you can do the things that you set out to do if you're willing to put yourself in the fire. If you're willing to be the sculptor and the clay, if you're willing to be the blacksmith and the sword. And it's not about running itself, but take the message and apply it to singing, dancing, social media, speaking. Put it towards that. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm speaking, is to encourage someone to do something that they never thought they could do, and encourage people to be someone that they never thought they could be. Thank you.
John, you're on mute.
Some of my best stuff gets set on mute. Could I please get 1 minute on the timer? And if you'd like to send Jacob compliments and notes in the private chat, please do so at this time. On the bright side, I probably had 4 ahs and ums while I was on mute, which is fine because our ah counter won't even notice, as right now he has become the table topics master. So Scott, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Bob, first question is for you. If you were the host of a talk show, who would you have on first?
There's a lot of different guests I could have on, but the very best is what I would go for. And that would be our Toastmaster, John Barrett. Now, there's other guests I would have on here too, but John Barrett knows more about everything than anyone in the whole world. John Barrett knows about the Carrington event. He knows how to ride his bike to Salt Lake City. The most amazing person I could ever have on my talk show. And I'm sure if I had a talk show, it would be the most popular talk show in the world, because I'd be having John on every week. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Bob. It sounds like an interesting guest to have. Speaking of that guest, John, if you could open a museum, what type of museum would you open and why?
Well, of course, I'd have to do the Bob Schlossmacher TV show museum. But if I didn't do that, I find Sherlock Holmes fascinating. And I just recently went to a Sherlock Holmes exhibit. And I found that I wanted most of it for my own personal collection. I would probably have a museum that, if not just Sherlock Holmes, was for mystery writers. It would be a museum for mystery writers and the different things that they've done. I particularly like Sue Grafton, who did A is for Alibi, B is for Burglar. She did the alphabet mysteries. I really liked that. But Sherlock Holmes has always been my favorite. And side note, Sherlock Holmes was written by a person who had previously written one of my favorite books and my second favorite movie, which is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, written by the same person. And the professor who made all those wonderful things became Q and made all those wonderful things for a really cool spy rather than for a dorky Bob or Dick Van Dyke. So I would go with a museum for mysteries and starting with Sherlock Holmes as my key mystery person. Back to you, Mr. Table Topics.
Thank you, John. That sounds like an interesting museum to visit after, of course, watching Bob's talk show. Ilham, if you didn't have the job that you have right now, what would you be and why?
Talking about a job, I lost one before. So I have a lot of other jobs that maybe I would like to apply. Let's say, for example, one of my dream jobs is basically to be a chef because I love cooking. The person who says that is, of course, obviously my wife. So whenever she is very tired, or let's just say that doesn't have time to cook, she would prefer I cook instead of just ordering food out there. And I think that that says that I have a great talent when it comes to cooking. You know, back then when I was a kid, my grandma ran a small restaurant in the area, and that was quite famous. A lot of visitors and people came to eat. And basically, I was just 4 to 5 years old at that time, and I involved myself in cooking. So what I did is just mixing every single ingredients into one bowl of egg, and I created an omelette when I was 4 years old. And that first talent, that first real experience of me enjoying cooking, and I ate my food, makes me realize that I have a talent in cooking. So let's just say one day I lost my job. I would be running a small restaurant later on and become a chef of my own small restaurant. Thank you. Back to you, Scott. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That sounds like a very cool job to be in. I believe that is all the time we have for table topics. So at this point, I would like to pass control to Bob, our general evaluator.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. First, I'm going to call on Jim Z for your evaluation of Nancy's speech.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Nancy, well done. So glad to hear you speak tonight and share a unique story that touches us all in a very special way because of how we live our lives today, and that's social media. I loved your opening when you said, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 15 years, you kind of put us in a scenario. You invited us in right away. And then you used the language of the platform. It was unprecedented because prior to social media as we know it today, it was information dissemination. It was only for the elite. And so you kind of categorized the initial introduction of social media into our society, and then you brought it home by sharing your own personal experience. I love the fact that when you did that and you talked about the good and the bad, that your vocal inflections went up and went down as you talk. Hey, this is good about it. This is not so good about it. And you use vocal inflection, which is a great way to communicate the point and continue to keep people engaged. Well done there. I also love the fact that you used a personal example. You know, when you talk about hand gestures, we talk about living within the screen of Zoom. You did a good job for the most part of keeping your hands up here and making those gestures there. And then as you narrowed it down to the conversation that you said, now let's talk about my first experience. And you talked about the reason why you opened up your first Facebook account. In doing that, what you ended up doing is giving us a glimpse of, oh yeah, there was a beginning to this, which seems normal to our world, but that was very positive. It was informative, and it was a great way to get started. And as you continued through that process, you then did a screen share and you showed us, here's my personal website on Facebook. Here's my business website. Here's a group website that I did post summit. And you started talking about how it's transformed even in your own life, which some of us have seen in our own lives, and some of us are on the front end of that. Yet all of that was a great solid walkthrough. If I could tell you anything about something to consider doing in the future, if you gave the speech again, was to pre-plan or pre-prep the tech for screen share. And sometimes simpler is better. We always talk about, I have so many ideas and so many things to tell you. How do I pick the ones? But it's always helpful in a speech when you pick the one on a screen and the one on a screen and the one. So maybe talk about this particular point here, this particular point here, and narrow it down. Overall, though, it was good. And I love the fact that you're bold enough to ask the Toastmaster for extra time. Not always do we see that, but you said, okay, I realize I have more to say and I'm out of time, but hey, can I get a little grace here? It's okay to do that, especially when we're not in a club contest. But in that process, I love that you asked for extra time. And then you gave us a call to action at the end of your speech. That's one of the ways when you kind of do an introduction and then you kind of draw to a conclusion. When you give us a call to action, don't let this be overregulated. If you have an issue or concern, look into it. Don't be afraid to call your legislature, etc. And you were very energetic and inviting throughout your entire speech. That was the one thing that made it also kind of fun, almost social media-like. It was very engaging. And we didn't have to flip screens and try to find something else because you kept our attention through your entire speech. Thank you very much, Nancy. Well done. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jim. Next, I'm going to call on Jeannie to give her evaluation of Jacob's speech.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Jacob, I thought you employed a great strategy at the beginning. You grabbed our attention with a question that included chafing and you said it with such confidence that I think sometimes when we're working on trying to build our confidence, if we start out strong like you did at the beginning, it just sets the tone and we feel more comfortable as we're speaking. So I thought that was a great strategy. Overall, I feel like you just have such a conversational, friendly, easy going style of speaking that's so easy to listen to. You smile, you use other facial expressions, and also you use vocal variety. So it makes it interesting to hear you speak. I like how you talked about leveling up both physically and mentally to the marathon, starting with 1 mile and then half mile and then going to full marathon. And when you talked about your self-talk, that relates to everyone. Everyone identifies that. So that endears you to your audience when you make statements that appeal to everyone, not just marathon runners, right? And you brought that home at the end when you were just trying to encourage and inspire others, no matter what it is that people are trying to do or challenging themselves with. And I just thought that was a great way to end the speech too. So it was a strong intro, very conversational in the middle, and then brought it all home with a strong conclusion. One thing I found a little distracting was the equipment that is in front of you when you're making gestures. Some of it was kind of hidden by that. So, you know, you're nice and centered in there, but just be aware of that space around you and what could be hiding your gestures from the viewers. I thought you did an amazing job, and I think you already have the confidence and I just encourage you to believe that in yourself, because we all hear it when we're listening to you. So thank you again for giving a speech tonight. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Jeannie. First, I'm going to call on Scott, our counter. Please unmute yourself, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. My counter report tonight may be a little incomplete, as I did not, of course, take note of any filler words prior to when John volunteered me. So, start with John had 127 ahs, 384 ums, and 86 double words. Well, the real tally might be a little lower. Nancy, I caught 1 ah, 1 restart, and 1 so. Jacob, you had 3 ums, 5 restarts, and 1 so. And Jeannie, I found 2 ahs. That is my report. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Scott. And next, I'll call on our huge ummer and R, John Barrett, to give the grammarian report.
Well, in fairness, I won't retaliate against Scott this time. I'll just volunteer him for something again next time. Fun to listen to. I heard at least 2 uses of the word juggernaut, both by Nancy, and the Facebook became a juggernaut of social media. Perfect use of it. Absolutely perfect. Nancy, very flippantly, hey, let's be friends. Very funny. And then you talked about almost something out of the Wayback Machine, MySpace, which was interesting. I'm surprised Farmville didn't come up, but it's just fun to go down social media memory lane. You talked about the love-hate relationship with social media. You talked about I would be heartily disqualified, which was funny. But again, we want to hear you talk. So that was great. And Ilham said, we want to listen to more for sure. So that was fun. Jacob, best opening ever, chafing. There's no way we weren't listening to whatever was next. It absolutely pulled us all in. That was fantastic. You talked about 26.4 miles of constant running, agony, and test of physical and mental fortitude, just really painting the picture. And I've worked at mile 22 on a marathon, and it's not pretty. So when you're talking about that, your lungs about to explode, very visual for us. And it gave you time to really be with your thoughts. I thought the really interesting thing that you said, though, was you thought back to the first run, to the person that I was, which is fantastic. That was great. The You're on Mute award goes to John Barrett for trying to talk while he was muted. Ilham said, I thought a very funny thing. She would prefer I cook. I love that. Kind of the subtle, yes, she would prefer that I cook. That was great. Jim Z, pre-plan or pre-pep, brought to you by the Peter Piper School of Communication. Are there enough plosives in that one for you? And Jeannie, you had a really wonderful word choice. You said that endears you to the audience. Rather than just saying that was good or we liked it, that endears you to the audience. A much better way of saying it. Fantastic job. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, John. Last but not least, I'll be calling on Jimmy Z for the timers report.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Tonight's timers report is the following. With special permission, Nancy's speech went 10 minutes and 24 seconds. Jacob had 5 to 7 minutes on his speech. He went 6 minutes and 24 seconds. Our table topics, Bob was 1 minute, 1 second. John, 1 minute, 24 seconds. Ilham was 1 minute, 39 seconds, all within that 1 to 2 minute range. The evaluators, 2 to 3 minutes. Jim came in at 2:59. Jeannie came in at 3:51. Counter Scott, 1 to 2 minutes, 36 seconds, sharp, efficient, even with all those odds and ums counting for John. I don't know how you did it, but you did. John, you came in the grammarians report at 2:11, and I forgot to set the timer, and because I'm last, I'm sure I came under my time limit. Back to you, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Mr. Timer. Now, for my General Evaluator's report. Jim, what he did, and I'm especially talking to Ilham, our evaluators did 2 different types of evaluations. Jim did what you would call a sandwich evaluation. So on the top layer, he had some positive things about Nancy's speech. In the middle, he had feedback, and he closed with some positive things about Nancy's speech at the end. Jeannie used very clear, descriptive words about Jacob's speech. And you mentioned how he ramped up from mile to half marathon to marathon. And I will repeat this, how he endeared himself to the audience. And you ended your evaluation with some great feedback for Jacob. Scott, that was an hilarious counter report. So couldn't have done any better. John used great humor with your counter report. Always welcome. And Jim, I loved your sober and accurate timing report. It was wonderful. And I'd really like to thank Scott, John, and Jim for filling in when I was called upon to introduce my team, and I had no idea who was going to be on my team. Thank you for stepping up at the last minute and taking those and making it real smooth, easy for me. And it was a great meeting. Like to see a few more people here. It's fun to have Ilham here. And, you know, and I have to mention in the speeches, Jacob, your descriptions of pain were wonderful. They weren't really wonderful, but very descriptive. And Nancy, I crawled out from under my rock to find out what this Facebook thing is. One last thing before I sign off of this fun meeting is, Ilham, I notice that behind me, I have windows. And in the backyard, it's full of snow. That snow will not melt until April 15th. I don't know if you understand what it's like up here, but it's what it is. So I'm going to hand this meeting over to our president, Jimmy Z.
Thank you very much, Bob, Mr. General Evaluator, and the entire team tonight. What a wonderful meeting. Thanks, everybody, for your participation. I'd like now to invite you, Ilham, to unmute yourself and share with us your feedback and reaction to tonight's meeting experience.
Okay, very it is such a great experience, you know, joining a Toastmasters club like this one. apart from enhancing my knowledge as a listener, because I love listening to your stories, I also learned a different kind of, let's say, culture in doing a meeting. So normally what we have in Indonesia, right, for this, basically Toastmasters is quite different from the one that I have at my clubs. My club is advanced kind of Toastmaster that focus too much on, um, like giving sharp evaluation, and sometimes it hurts people that came. Let's say, for example, we have an evaluation session for um, the speakers, and sometimes it gives some thrill and shock to the guests like me. For example, when I joined them for the first time, I was shocked. So the guests won't come for the next meeting. That's what we experience, because most of Indonesian so-called professional speakers were basically in the clubs that I am right now operating. So I need some humanity in doing Toastmasters. So I also tell to myself that I will participate and join other clubs meeting. And I find this kind of club, Minnesota Toastmasters, is so warm, welcoming, inspiring, educating, and it has a lot of values basically in just 1 hour kind of meeting. That's pretty much awesome for me. I would love to come back, take roles. If you want me to have some roles, then I will be also happy to help. Let's say you want me to do so. Okay, so basically I'm so happy. Yeah, that's my experience joining this club meeting for the first time. Thank you, Jimmy, for the chance and then the welcome. Okay, John, Jacob, Nancy, Jenny, Bob, and also Scott. Yeah, I'm so happy to get to know everyone today. Thank you very much. Back to our
Very
president.
good, Ilham. Thank you for sharing. You know,
My
it's
pleasure.
interesting. I appreciate the fact that you talk about how your experience as an international to us, around the world. I know that clubs function in different ways, and certain clubs level, even in the United States, the more specific ones that are
Mhm.
geared for public speaking professionals might be a little more strict or a little more pointed in
Mhm.
correction. We believe that the structure that gives correction and encouragement go hand in hand, not solely trying to be hard on or tear someone down in that process. So thanks for sharing that. It was an interesting observation and something we sometimes take for granted, but
Yeah,
we
indeed.
strive to be consistent there. So I appreciate that feedback. And of course, you're welcome back anytime. Please note this, though. We meet the first Tuesday of every month live, face to face, not on
Okay.
Zoom. So next week, we will not be meeting on Zoom. We meet
Mm-hmm.
at a building locally. So we'll be back in 2 weeks on this link for Zoom. Then you're certainly welcome to plug
Okay.
in. We do not do that live meeting in a hybrid version with both
Yeah.
virtual and live. It's
Mhm.
just live alone. And so in that process, unfortunately, we won't see you next week, but we'd love to have you back anytime. You're always welcome.
Yep.
John
Thank
Barrett,
you
your
very
hand's up.
much.
For the
Thank
record,
you,
Ilham,
Jimmy.
you are invited next week if you can make the plane trip. If it's not invited.
Okay.
Yeah, I would love to. Let's say if I go to USA, Minnesota, yeah, I will try to contact you guys.
John, this is, I'm gonna just permanently mute him, I think, just a second. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That was a good one. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your feedback. Great to have you here. Speaking of meetings next week, I know that I mentioned in an email that a former member of ours, Jake Johnson, was going to join us tonight. I'm not sure why he didn't. He is planning, to my knowledge, to be live at the meeting next week. So please, we'll take roles in just a moment, but please plan to the best of your ability to be there. I did want to make a comment about, you saw Robert was on our agenda for tonight. And as we talked about last week, both Robert on the international speech contest and me as the evaluation speech contest. Tomorrow night is the area 23 and 25 club contest that we will be participating in. It's at 6 p.m. You can go to d106tm.org to register. You do have to register to get a ticket to attend that. If you want to come and support us. Robert, unfortunately, was not able to come and practice his speech tonight because he's sick. He's not got COVID. He actually has a fever and a sore throat and hard to focus. So as he and I have been talking every day for the last 3 days, will likely be a game time decision about whether he has the ability to participate in that contest. I've notified the area director that that's the case, and he said that's great. If we can have him, great. If not, that's the way it is. His heart's broken because he's been working toward this and wants to do it. So if you if you want to come and support us as representatives of Toastmaster on a Stick Toastmasters, please do that. That's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central Time, and it'll go evaluation speech contest will happen first. Now we're joining Area 23, so there'll be an Area 23 team and Area 25 team. We're Area 25 that will compete in the evaluation speech contest, and then there'll be the break and then the international speech contest. So be prepared to go. I don't know how many participants there are, but if you want to come and support us, that would be fantastic if you'd be willing to do that. Speaking of live, let's go back to live. That is a Zoom meeting, by the way. Speaking of live, for next week, Jeannie, would you be willing to unmute yourself? And let's just, I haven't even looked, but I will right now, go around the horn and see who's available for taking roles for next week's meeting when we meet together.
Okay. And Jim, I noticed that nothing is on the agenda, but
Okay.
I believe you have some speakers lined up. Is that the case?
Not sure. So we have guests lined up to come, not necessarily speakers. So
Okay.
yeah, so Jake is gonna come. He's a former member who wants to come, and his ultimate goal is to invite some of his teammates at Minitronics, where we used to meet, to come join this club. So he wants to come and see us. We're not far away, and so that will be the case. So it'll be guests joining us. So we need speakers. We need all the roles filled. So if
All the
anybody's
roles.
available for next week.
Mhm. Okay, I will go around. John?
I'd like to evaluate Scott.
Very clever.
Well, I'll be an evaluator either way.
Scott, are you going to be the speaker then?
We'll be the general evaluators, and I can evaluate John.
Touche.
Well
Speaker.
played, sir.
Nice.
Jacob, can you take a role next week?
I am not going to be in the country next week.
That's right. You're going.
Okay. Have fun
I
and try lots of coffee when you're down there.
I will.
Nancy,
I'd like a chance to redeem my ability to stay within a time limit, so I would like to be a speaker next week.
okay.
Woohoo.
Bob, can you take a role next week?
Yes. Is Toastmaster taken?
No, that's available.
I will take Toastmaster.
And Jimmy, we've got speaker, table topics.
If I remember correctly, Jeannie, you're going to be gone next week.
Well, that's changed.
Okay.
I had to change my flight, so I will be here next week.
Okay. Do you have a preference to take a grammarian counter timer role, or would you want to be table topics?
I would like grammarian.
Okay, I'll take table topics then.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, excellent. I do want to make one other announcement. I know Nathan's not here tonight. He's out of town. He will be here next week. We do have a new member, Ron Lurquin from ERA. He has officially joined. He's paid his dues. He will be there live and in color and a member. And as we kind of move, we'll talk more about it as leaders as we move toward possibly going more live. We'll see what happens with that. But we do have a new member. And remember also next week that Jake Johnson will be there. We'd love to have that opportunity go as well. So that's the update for me. Any other questions or comments for the good of the club? Okay. Well, very good. Jacob and I are going to stay on the call to talk about a couple of things. Ilham, thank you for being here. Glad that you were here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Pleasure is mine, everyone. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll sign it off. Okay.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone
everybody.
else. We'll see you
Bye-bye.
later. Jacob, you
Day.
stay